This is ContraZoom,
where we go back and forth about film.
I'm Dakota Arsenault.
And I'm Rachel Ho.
On today's episode, we are reacting to the just announced 94th Academy Award nominations. The awards are going to be handed out on March 27th, so we have plenty of time to really dissect all the different movies and talk about them and who we think's going to win, how it's all going to shake out. But today, we're just looking at the nominations, what our gut reactions are, who we're happy for, who we're sad about, who should have been there, who shouldn't have been there, all this sort of exciting stuff. And I'm really excited because I love Oscar season. You know, every year I do a series breaking down who I think is going to win each of the nominations based on the Best Picture nominees. That's always a fun little thing. I've started to bring on more different guests and not just do solo episodes, because solo episodes are really hard to do. I know you're not as big into the Oscars as I am, Rachel, but are you still somewhat excited about after seeing this nomination list come out?
Yes and no. I'm not as big on the Oscars as you are, like you said, but even though I don't agree with the Academy probably 9 out of 10 times, I still get swept up into it. Like, it's very easy to get swept up into it. I think if you like movies, even if you look at it and think that's bull, it's very difficult to ignore it and not kind of take part in it like a sporting event, in a sense. Like, it is the movie's version of the Super Bowl, which is coming up as well. But yeah, and in terms of this year's list, I haven't actually been that big on the movies of 2021, if I'm completely honest. There's been some really cool ones, but I don't know if there's any movie in the list that I'm absolutely enamored with. Maybe Dune can come close to that, but even Dune, I love it, but I'm not as in love with it maybe as other people are.
Yeah. That's fair. We're both very into sports as well, so I get how we can kind of parlay, sporting term there, our interest in sports and sort of see how it overlaps with movie stuff like that. I know a lot of people look at Oscars and how do you quantify art? How do you give an award out for a movie and all that sort of stuff, because it's so subjective. But it's all in good fun. I know the Oscars are silly, but I do take them super seriously. And you know what? If people want to judge me for that, I'm completely fine with that.
I think we should probably stop judging people for things that they like. If people like it, let them like it. It's frivolous, and I think that anybody who's really into, like you just said, you're really into the Oscars, but you know it's silly. But who cares? So is watching grown men throw a football around. It is silly, but It's fun. Whatever. So let people enjoy what they want to enjoy.
Yeah. Well, all that said, let's maybe dive into it a little bit. I'll start off with listing movies that had the most nominations, and we'll sort of before we get into the nitty gritty of the actual individual categories, we'll just sort of get our thoughts on that. So leading the pack was Power of the Dog with 12, Dune got 10, Belfast and West Side Story got 7, King Richard got 6, Don't Look Up, Drive My Car, and Nightmare Alley got 4, and then a whole bunch of movies with 3, and then a few with 2, and then of course a whole bunch of movies with just 1. So looking at that, what are your general thoughts? Are you surprised the fact that Power of the Dog, Dune, Belfast, and West Side Story were sort of the big 4?
No, I think if kind of leading up into it, looking at the other awards, the other award shows, it was pretty obvious that I think those were going to be the big movies that got in. Power of the Dog reminds me of, and actually, shout out to Brody Cottenham who said this, it reminds him of Nomadland in a sense. And in the same way that it's been held up from in the award season, they're very similar. They're kind of slow burn, very, very beautiful movies. I didn't personally connect with either of them very much. CODA is probably the one that I'm most excited by, just because I think it's different and I think it's kind of cool that it got in. Because, I don't know if it would have been a movie that, say, 10 years ago, people would have had too many eyes on.
Yeah, I wonder how much last year's ceremony, where the big studio pictures were issued for smaller ones by virtue of the fact that there were no big studio releases in 2020, so that's how the Oscars reflect it. And we got stuff like Promising Young Woman and Sound of Metal and stuff like that. We're able to kind of get in and really get some great awards attention that they deserved. I wonder if there's a bit of carryover this year where it's hey, you know what? We don't have to nominate Spider-Man No Way Home for Best Picture.
Yeah, I mean, that's an argument a lot of people are making about the Oscars, of that, like, quote unquote, being not out of touch, right? Like, Spider-Man is by far the biggest movie of last year. It made, how much money has it made now? It's incredible.
Oh,
Like, I think
it's pretty close. It was like
are they over
700
the 2
million.
billion?
Worldwide, oh, I think so, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the biggest movie of the year, and it got the visual effects award. I think it just got the VFX award, or nomination. I shouldn't say the award. It just got the nomination. And I mean, I've seen some people on Twitter saying, like, has the Oscars become maybe a little bit more art house than they used to be? Because if you look at the 90s, of the time that we grew up watching the Oscars, it was big movies like, the Titanic's, As Good as It Gets, Jerry Maguire, like those kind of movies that were very popular at the time when they came out.
Even stuff like Braveheart and Dances with Wolves were still pretty big box office hits too.
And so now it kind of feels like, or not now, but I should say, it's been kind of a slow progression over the years of it being a bit more cinephile-y. And definitely last year's, to your point about what happened with the Oscars last year, like, it's definitely progressed that a little bit, as I think, COVID did that to a lot of things, but this probably being one of the most insignificant, but it just moves it along a bit faster almost. And yeah, this year, I mean, there's a lot of, you always hear the people being like, I haven't heard of any of these movies. Like, there's so many people on my timeline who I follow for, like, baseball reasons and things like that, and they're just like, what are these movies? What is A Power of a Dog? Like, what are you guys talking about with this? And I can't blame them. Like, they're not the big movies of last year, and just in terms of what were people talking about, and what were people actually going to watch. But then you can also argue, because last year was still a bit wonky in terms of what was open, cinemas closing, different parts of the world and things like that. The only movie I can really think of that was a huge buzz was Spider-Man, really. I don't know if anything else really got into the zeitgeist as much as that.
Dune would probably be the closest, I would say.
Oh, Dune, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Dune, I did not find people who weren't even into, like, sci-fi or anything like that. They were kind of like, what is this movie that everyone's talking about? So fair enough, yeah, Dune did a good job of that too.
Yeah, I think it probably helped that it was based on a very, very popular book from the 60s and 70s. And then, of course, I think a lot of people probably remember, older people probably remember the 84 version, the David Lynch one. So I think there's enough name recognition there. They're like, hey, I know what Dune is.
Yeah, but then you have something like The Eyes of Tammy Faye, which I know only got nominated for, like, a couple things, I think. But, like, that was even during TIFF, like, that became nothing. So it's I think it would be interesting for the Academy to, like, have maybe a bit more balance and go back to kind of the 90s, where the big movies that were enjoyed. But then it might just be a reflection of the kinds of movies that the general population is watching these days. Like, it's not the same kind of prestige drama, if you want to call it that, are coming out anymore. Those movies aren't getting made. Like, I doubt a Jerry Maguire could get made today.
Well, if it did, it wouldn't be the highest grossing movie of the year. It would be, like an A24 type of thing where it would make, $20 million, and that's it.
Yeah. And then head to streaming.
Yeah, which, we sort of talked about this in our end of the year wrap up episode about what were the biggest movies of the year. And you look at the types of movies that are now the biggest movies, and it's all either, sequels or reboots or side quills, whatever you want to call, like, spinoff sort of things, or, like, based on already existing IP. But then, it's always shocking to me when I look at, like, even the 90s, look at, like, what the 10 highest grossing movies of the year were, and it just, like, boggles my mind. Or, like, how something like 3 Men and a Baby was the highest grossing movie the year it came out. Like, that just shocks me that something like that was the highest grossing movie. And we just don't get these big budget, high prestige, types of movies that would appeal to a mass audience, that are at least, I don't want to say completely original, because, if it's based on a book or a play or something like that, like, obviously there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just like, well, how about another Jurassic World, or how about another MCU movie? And that's all people are going to go and see in the theaters.
For some reason, one movie that sticks out to me a lot, like, on this topic, is The Talented Mr. Ripley. I don't know why. I always think about it as it's such a good movie, The Talented
So
Mr.
good.
Ripley. And it did pretty well, like when it came out. And it had now three kind of quite name brand stars, like, Matt Damon. And although I think that might have been one of Damon's earlier movies, if I'm
It
not
was, yeah.
mistaken. But Gwyneth Paltrow and Jude Law were already kind of name-ish. They were like up and comers, like
Yeah.
there was like a hint to them at that point. And a movie like that today, it would literally go direct to streaming, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like I don't even think something like that could make it into a box office. And it would be one of those movies that people go, what is this talented Mr. Like, who's Mr. Ripley? Like, what the hell are you
Yeah.
guys talking about? Which is a shame because like obviously from back then, it's such a good movie. And I would consider it maybe not a classic, but it is one that I think it transcends the time. Like, it's not just, oh, it was only enjoyable in the 90s. It's still enjoyable today. It's still a really great movie. And I think for those three, especially considering how many movies they've done, I think those are three, like for all three of them, that movie is up at the top of their
Yeah.
lists for what's their best films. And that's kind of a shame. And that I believe too was pretty heavily awarded by the Academy as well.
It got a bunch of nominations, but I don't think it won anything other than maybe screenplay. All right, let's sort of maybe go through some of the bigger categories, and we'll get our general thoughts on it. Obviously, the first one and the biggest is Best Picture. We've got Belfast, CODA, Don't Look Up, Drive My Car, Dune, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. Overall, I look at this list, and based on what I was seeing from precursors and predictions and all that sort of stuff, it mostly makes sense. There's obviously a few little surprises. One, I think the biggest is Drive My Car doing as well. I think a lot of people were really hoping that it would make the Best Picture list, but I think a lot of people were sort of hesitant to like really go all in on that prediction because people will be like, well, Parasite made it. Well, Parasite was a bit of a lightning in a bottle situation. Is that going to be a regular occurrence where we're going to get an international film where, to put it bluntly, no-name actors to Hollywood as the lead sort of thing? Would that make the cut? And so I think that's a very pleasant surprise, and one that people are pointing to the Academy of being like, hey, good job on, it isn't just, about Dune and West Side Story. You do have room for movies that don't come from Hollywood that can make it in.
I think there was a lot of talk about The Worst Person in the World, and that came from Norway.
Mm-hmm.
That getting a nomination as well. Like, there was actually a good amount of discussion about that. And I think it's an interesting spot for the Academy to be in now because, I mean, to borrow a quote from Bong Joon-ho when he called the Oscars, like a local festival, like it's very local. And the Oscars are meant to be a Hollywood awards show, not an international awards show. Like that, it is a little bit different. So I think there is room for them to say, hey, we want to be something that represents cinema internationally speaking, like the cinema at large, not just what we make in our backyard. And I think Parasite, obviously, I mean, movies before that have kind of opened that door as well, but Parasite was probably the really big one because it actually won. I don't know if Drive My Car is going to win this year. Probably not, but I think it's encouraging. I think it's pretty cool. Like I said, I like that CODA got included. I think the only one that I really wasn't happy with, and I was a bit prepped that it was going to be in there, was Don't Look Up. I really didn't like that movie.
Yeah, there's definitely no real surprise that I ended up getting in. The Academy seems to really be all in on the Adam McKay bandwagon after Vice. There was, little surprises, stuff like Tick, Tick, Boom not being in there, despite the fact that I wasn't a fan of being the Ricardos. I thought that it probably had a shot to get in there. And then, there's probably a few others that I think Nightmare Alley was probably a bit of the surprise that it did get in as well. The Lost Daughter also looked like it could potentially get in. I think those are the main ones that were really, truly in contention. Maybe House of Gucci as well, which I think that's a completely different thing, is how shockingly poor House of Gucci did overall, only getting a hair and makeup nomination. But yeah, I look at this list, I'm like, that's kind of what I expected, obviously with a few surprises, but they weren't like completely left field off the board surprises. They were like, oh, these are probably like the 11 through 13 movies that have a chance.
Same. I completely agree with that. I think the one that I really was hoping for, but I mean, you reminded me too, it was very much so a long shot, was Flea. Because I was hoping it would get all four of like the animated, international, documentary, and Best Picture. Because I thought that could be really cool.
Yeah,
but
that would.
It's fine.
You have to
It's
settle
fine.
for
I'll
only
just-
being a record holder for having the 3 nominations that it has.
Yeah, whatever. Fine, fine. But I think like logic says, I know it's a ranked ballot, so it's not, there isn't a lot of logic that can be applied, which we'll get into later. But, you know, if you're going to nominate a movie for all of those kind of subcategories, shouldn't it therefore be then it is just an overall good, like one of the best pictures of the year then?
Yeah.
But I digress. It's fine. Fine.
Yes. Yeah. The way the Oscars work for the actual nomination period is the individual branches nominate. So it's actually sort of surprising that Flea showed up on all 3, because that meant that the documentary branch, the animation branch, and whoever is on the international one all voted for it sort of independently. Whereas Best Picture
because
is
it was one of the best pictures of the year. That's why.
I guess so.
Just putting it out there.
Moving on to the Best Director category, which basically sort of takes the Best Picture category and shows us who the real contenders are. And we've got Kenneth Branagh for Belfast. I apologize if I say this incorrectly. Ryosuke Hamaguchi for Drive My Car. Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza. Jane Campion for Power of the Dog. And Steven Spielberg for West Side Story. Obviously, I think the biggest news is Jane Campion becomes the first 2-time nominated woman in the Best Director category. She was the second woman ever nominated, back for The Piano in 92. And I believe she is now the 6th woman ever nominated, which always frustrating that this happened. But congratulations to her for being the first 2-time nominated.
Yes,
Hopefully now the Academy doesn't have to be precious about it. Of like, oh, who is going to be the one that's worthy to be the first 2-time nominee?
That's really annoying. I didn't know that, actually. I didn't know that she was only I guess it makes sense, because there have only been literally a handful,
literally one handful.
One handful plus one finger.
Yes.
That's very frustrating. But I'm going to go into my rant about why Denis Villeneuve wasn't nominated. I think that's ridiculous.
Please.
Like,
the floor is yours.
Well, I mean, going back to what I was saying about like the logic, and I understand the individual branches are voting, but literally Dune got a nomination in every category that it could have, with the exception of directing and acting. It didn't receive any in acting awards, but I don't think that, like, I kind of agree with that. I don't know if anybody's performance in that. The only person I thought maybe was Charlotte Rampling. I thought maybe she could have gotten something, but you know, I was a bit more excusable, whatever, because it was an ensemble piece, and I don't know if any one person really stood out. So that's cool. But all of the technical awards, Dune got something in every one of those, and I'm pretty confident it will do like a pretty decent job on the actual night of getting. Not all of them. I doubt it's going to get all of them, but I'm sure it'll pick up a few. And then it gets Best Picture. So the idea that for some reason, the one person who was in charge of this entire movie doesn't also get recognized is so incredibly frustrating to me. I love Denis Villeneuve. I've said it before on here. I'm a big fan of his. So I was really, really hoping. I just think it's like the most egregious snub for the entire award season is that, to me. And I know it doesn't mean anything. He's still a great director, but it's still annoying.
Yeah, it's so weird. The Academy isn't fully on board with him. Like, other than Blade Runner 2049, the rest of his movies haven't really gotten the Academy attention. Obviously, Arrival, I think, got a visual effects nomination, but that was it, if I'm remembering correctly.
Which is also ridiculous, because
it was. Amy Adams should have won that year, frankly, but that's beside the point.
Absolutely.
But, you know, like, Sicario didn't get anything. Prisoners didn't get anything. I think Ensemble was a best foreign language film back in the day when that came out. Mm-hmm. But other than that, yeah, Blade Runner 49 was the first time his movies were actually sort of acknowledged by the Academy. And even then, it was sort of like we like the technical aspects of it, basically. And it sort of seems the same way, where they're like, we like the technical aspects of it, even though they're not seem to be fully on board with him. So it's a weird thing that I'm not too sure what to make of it.
It's almost, I mean, you could argue the same for Christopher Nolan as well. You know, his movies have very famously not gotten recognized. And back to the point that we were talking about right at the top of the movies that have been discussed the most, you know, like a movie like Inception is still talked about quite often. and still enjoyed by people. And that movie's, 12 years old now, which is insane. But, he didn't get anything for that. I think it got nominated for Best Picture, if I'm not mistaken, Inception. But he didn't get anything for it. And like The Dark Knight, that trilogy, like it kickstarted the whole other thing in the movie world. And, Nolan didn't get that I feel like Nolan, Villeneuve, I was going to say Scorsese, because even Scorsese didn't win anything until quite late in his career, which is baffling.
No, he was a frequent nominee, but yeah, he didn't win.
Yeah, but he didn't win. Yeah, and you're true. Like he did at least get recognized for it, though. But it's I don't know what they have against Denis. I don't know why they hate French Canadians. I'm sure maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, Canadians have reasons to hate French Canadians, not the Americans. Why do they hate French Canadians?
No, we have Alberta for that. It's absolutely fine.
This is all jokes, everyone. Yeah, so it is an interesting category. It really sort of looks like it narrows down. Power of the Dog and Belfast are probably the two main contenders for Best Picture. West Side Story maybe being the tertiary one there. But definitely great to see Hamaguchi get in for Drive My Car. That definitely seemed like a long shot, because it looked like Denis Villeneuve was probably the lock to get in for that. And then if you want to go other things that the Academy liked, maybe Adam McKay for Don't Look Up, or something else. Like, obviously, I thought Ridley Scott maybe had a shot for House of Gucci, but clearly the Academy did not like that movie. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'm blanking on his name. The guy that did King Richard, him, or Guillermo del Toro for Nightmare Alley. I don't know, but yeah, it's a pleasant surprise that Hamaguchi got it. A little head scratching that Villeneuve didn't get in.
I would have taken PTA out and thrown in Villeneuve for that, and that might just be my own bias against PTA and for Villeneuve, but I don't know. I feel like what he did was pretty spectacular, and what Licorice Pizza, to be completely fair, I haven't seen it yet, so I can't really comment too much on it, but it does just seem more of, a very typical PTA movie.
All right. Let's
just
move
saying.
on. Of course, yes. Let's move on to the Best Actor, which we've got Javier Bardem for being the Ricardos, and Benedict Cumberbatch for The Power of the Dog, Andrew Garfield for Tick, Tick, Boom, Will Smith for King Richard, and Denzel Washington for Tragedy of Macbeth. I think obviously the biggest sort of red flag for this is Javier Bardem getting in for being the Ricardos, which I think is just a complete shock. I don't know how the rest of the film world is reacting to this, but I did not see this at all. The other four seemed like they were pretty much locks to get in. As far as who maybe else could have gotten in, I know there is talk about Leonardo DiCaprio for Don't Look Up, Bradley Cooper for Nightmare Alley, Adam Driver for House of Gucci. I obviously would have loved to see Simon Rex for Red Rocket, but that was never happening to begin with. But yeah, what do you think of Javier Bardem making it?
I'm going to throw in also Peter Dinklage for Cyrano. Yeah. I know that. Yeah, he was getting Cyrano. Sorry, I was thinking
Cyrano, the George Clooney
movie. Yeah, he was getting a little bit of heat for it, like a little bit of attention there. But I don't know why I wasn't that surprised. Not because I think that Javier Bardem was particularly good. I really didn't like being the Ricardos. I don't know what him and Kidman both. I don't think either of them really deserved to get any acting nomination, but I think the only reason I wasn't that surprised was because he got nominated for something else. I think the SAG award. I think he got nominated for that. Yeah, and so that's why when I saw that one surprised me. The first award that I saw he got nominated for, I was like, wait, what? It didn't even seem like a possibility that he would get any acting nominations or any heat towards his name for it. But after I saw that nomination, I went, oh, interesting. So there are people who, other actors, assuming, who think that he is deserving to be in there. So I don't know. I don't agree with it either, though, personally. I'm with you on the Simon Rex thing. I think that he should have gotten in, but I think that was a very, 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 very much so a long shot. Nicolas Cage as well for Pig.
Yeah.
Some people thought that maybe he would get in, but that would have been really cool to see, actually, Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I think Nicolas Cage has too many enemies in Hollywood that it probably would never happen. And if there was a time for it to happen, it would be for Pig, which is a damn shame. Being the Ricardos is a movie that I'm both surprised that it did as well as it did and surprised it didn't do better. Like, I'm surprised it didn't get like into Best Picture or into one of the screenplays, original screenplay, I assume. Like, I'm surprised that didn't happen.
Screenplay, yeah, I thought because it's Sorkin.
Yeah.
So I just kind of thought he would get in too.
But then I'm surprised that Javier Bardem, and we're going to get to it, J.K. Simmons both got in.
See, if you said to me of the four leading or the four main roles, who would you put in? I would put J.K. Simmons and apologies, I can't remember who the supporting actress was in that, but I would say those two over Javier Bardem and Nicole Kidman.
Yeah,
because I think that they were better. Like, they were just more interesting, and I also really like J.K. Simmons. So, but I'm not to say I don't like Javier Bardem. I really like Javier Bardem, but I don't know if he was particularly great as Ricky Ricardo.
It's so tough because I didn't mind any of the four main performances. I especially like J.K. Simmons, much like you, but I thought the movie was so bad that it's really hard for me to acknowledge a good performance in a bad movie.
It's true. Yeah, I completely get that. And sometimes I mean, what's the movie last year I'm thinking of? The Billie Holiday one with Audrey Day.
Yeah.
You know, she was great in it, but the movie wasn't good. And so I agree, like, it is kind of hard to see past a bad movie and it's very rare to be able to have that happen where it's like the movie is, I'm not going to go as far as say as Ricardo's is total crap, but it was not a great movie. And it's weird that for not a great movie, 3 of the actors get nominated for it. I mean, this is obviously all in our own opinion. On the more positive side, though, I was very happy to see Denzel Washington. I know that maybe it's not that surprising to see Denzel Washington get nominated for an Academy Award for Macbeth, but I don't know. I kind of felt like maybe he was getting a little bit lost in the shuffle there because he doesn't really do the campaigning or anything like that. He's Denzel. He doesn't need to do that. But I was very, very
going on his legacy.
That was probably, I think, between him and Simon Rex, but I was very much so enamored with Denzel's performance as Macbeth. So that was probably my favorite male performance of the year was his.
Yeah, I loved it too. And if it didn't make the cut, I wouldn't be completely shocked just because A24 also was doing a pretty terrible job at campaigning this year for their movies. So if they're like, well, just not enough people saw Tragedy of Macbeth, I'd be like, well, all right, that sucks. That's dumb of them, but I understand how that ended up happening and if someone else got in. But yeah, the fact that he got in, I'm very happy about it. It looks like it's probably either Benedict Cumberbatch or Will Smith's award to lose, which, oh man, Will Smith is going to go so hard in campaigning this season, which is frustrating that a lot of the time who ends up winning is who does a best job campaigning.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, those are the two that I'm not big on. I think, actually, that's not true. I think Benedict was very good in Power of the Dog. Like, I think he was good. I'm just not crazy about the movie, but it's kind of the same, like the Nomadland comparison. Like, I wasn't big on the movie, but I can see why Frances McDormand gets in. Like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Benedict, I would be very happy with him winning. And I'm sure we'll get to the supporting actor, but Jesse Plemons as well. I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, so let's move over to actress then. We've got Jessica Chastain for The Eyes of Tammy Faye, Olivia Colman for The Lost Daughter, Penelope Cruz for Parallel Mothers, Nicole Kidman for Being the Ricardos, and Kristen Stewart for In Spencer. There's two kind of big surprises, I would say. One, and both of them I would say are very positive. The first one being Penelope Cruz for Parallel Mothers. I know a lot of people were really hoping for this movie to get in. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I'm very excited to because I love Pedro Almodovar. A lot of people were really hoping for it to get in, and it sort of seemed like she's probably the number 6. Something's going to really have to go her way in order for her to get in, and it seems like something did go her way and that she got in. And the other one was Kristen Stewart, who, film Twitter, favorite actress of the year. Kristen Stewart, love that. Everyone loved that movie. It really seemed as the weeks were kind of coming up to this award nomination that she was really losing a lot of steam. And there was a lot of articles coming out of anonymous ballot voters being like, I just don't like Kristen Stewart, I'm not voting for her, sort of thing coming out. And a lot of people just really didn't get this movie. Like, there's almost no dialogue in large chunks of it. It's very much an imagined portrait of someone that we think we know, but don't really know. So it really messes with a lot of people's head. If you go and being like, oh, it's going to be like The Crown, but a movie, it's not. It's not at all. So I'm personally happy that Kristen Stewart got nominated, but she was definitely a bit of a sort of teetering on the edge. Maybe Kristen Stewart doesn't get in. What are your thoughts on, Cruz and Stewart getting in and maybe the overall category?
So Kristen Stewart, the funniest thing to me was like, I like Spencer more than I thought I would. I think I said in a really early episode, like it wasn't one that I was particularly looking forward to, but I ended up quite enjoying it. Maybe because my expectations were pretty low. But as the weeks were going on and she just wasn't, and like I saw the same things you did of people saying like, I just don't like her. And I was like, that's not a good reason not to nominate. A good performance. It was a solid performance. And so as time was going, I was like, I'm suddenly rooting for Kristen Stewart because I think it's absolutely nonsense that she isn't getting in. And I know that people kind of came up to, it was between her and Lady Gaga for that last spot in the nominations. And personally, I thought Kristen Stewart was better than Gaga for that. So like that made me kind of happy to see like that she did eventually get in. But not necessarily because like I was rooting for her from the very beginning. It was more of just as she was getting more and more flack. And I saw some people say, well, it's because she's not campaigning. It's because she said she doesn't care about awards. And I was like, that should have no bearing on whether or not a performance is good. In terms of Penelope, I did very recently, just a couple days ago, I saw Parallel Mothers, and I'm so happy she got in because she's phenomenal in it. And I actually do wish the movie got a bit more recognition. I think it only got that and a score, I think best score as well. And I think it's a phenomenal movie. It's really nice. Like it's a very, very lovely movie, and it's interesting and it's sad at times. Like, yeah, I really enjoyed it, so I'm quite happy for her. I think for me, the one that I was really hoping for, even though she had absolutely no traction to her name, was Jodie Comer. I really, really wanted her to get in because I thought she was so good in The Last Duel. And just as Denzel was my favorite male performance of the year, like Jodie Comer was my favorite female performance of the year. I really loved her. Katrina Balfe was another one that I'm actually a little surprised she didn't get in for Belfast.
I think she would have been considered supporting actress is why.
Is she supporting?
I think
guess,
so.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. Even then, she still didn't get in, which surprised me.
No,
we'll get there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jodie Comer would have been my number one. I was going to talk about at the end, but we'll talk about here as well. Last year, we did this fun exercise where we came up with, if we were Academy voters, who would we vote for? We are going to do this article again this year. And I'm sure Jodie Comer is going to probably be number one on both of our lists without a doubt, because she was so good in that movie. But yeah, this is such a chaotic category this year because there is a lot made of, over the course of all the big precursors, there is no consistent overlap over who the nominees were. It's not like one single performer was winning everything or being nominated for everything. The SAGs, the BAFTAs, the Golden Globes, I'm forgetting on some of the other ones. It was just all complete randomness for this category, which is so interesting. Obviously, Jessica Chastain getting in. Not a great movie, Eyes of Tammy Faye. Same for Nicole Kidman for being the Ricardos. Both of them are basically in a lot of makeup, performing like someone else in movies that aren't that great. Olivia Colman, not really a surprise. The Academy really does like her. I really didn't like The Lost Daughter, so I don't want to crap on it too much. But I think the biggest shock to a lot of people was Lady Gaga not getting in for House of Gucci.
I think, you say like there was nobody who was consistent throughout. I think Gaga was the closest one to being consistent.
Yeah.
And yeah, the fact that she didn't make it in is a bit surprising. And I would take Kidman out. I would take Chastain out for Gaga, or Ruth Negga as well. She didn't, for passing, she didn't get any. I mean, she didn't have too much traction with her either. I think she had maybe a SAG or a BAFTA nomination, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think Gaga was probably the closest to being the more surefire lock, and she was the one that just didn't make it at all, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on to Best Supporting Actor. We've got Kieran Hinds from Belfast, Troy Kotsur from CODA, Jesse Plemons for Power of the Dog, J.K. Simmons for Being the Ricardos, and Cody Smith-McPhee for Power of the Dog as well. This is one of the categories I look at and I'm just like, you know what? I liked all of their performances. I'm pretty happy with how this category shook out. Obviously, you know, if I had my way, I'd have a few different people in there, maybe Jamie Dornan in it. But overall, I look at it, I'm like, this is a good crop of nominees. What do you think?
I agree with you. Like like you said, like there's some people. Even I love Jamie Dornan, but I actually don't know if I would have put him in. But like someone like Coleman Domingo in Zola.
Oh yeah, from Zola.
I know Zola is not. It's not like an Oscar-y movie, but
yeah,
he was so good in that, and so I'm like, oh, like that would have been really cool to see him in there. But yeah, like you said, the 5, I'm not mad at it. Like I don't look at it, and there's no Nicole Kidman in there. There's no Javier Bardem. But I'm like, what are you doing in this category? Like I feel like they're all really good performances, and yeah, they're deserving to be in there. Like it's I think Power of the Dog, it doesn't surprise me that they took, I think with the exception of leading actress, I think they had something in every category, and because it's a really well acted movie, like it's really well done, so it doesn't surprise me that they got 2 of the 5 in there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is a group where I look at it, and other than being the Ricardos, I like all the movies. Obviously, I know you're not as high on Power of the Dog, but it looks like it's probably going to be Cody Smith-McPhee's award to lose unless he vote splits. Maybe Troy Kotsur ends up surprising in winning the award, but I would not be shocked if Cody Smith-McPhee ends up walking away with it.
Yeah, I think he's probably if you were going to bet on it, like if you're going to put actual money on it, he's the safest one there.
Yeah. We have nothing really to say about this category. Might as well just go on to the next one, which is supporting actress, which we've got Jessie Buckley for The Lost Daughter, Ariana DeBose for West Side Story, Judi Dench from Belfast, Kirsten Dunst from Power of the Dog, and Anjanou Ellis from King Richard. This is another kind of interesting category where I think there's a few surprises. As much as I didn't like The Lost Daughter, Jessie Buckley was the only one I really liked in that movie. She's a fantastic actress. It's nice for her to finally kind of get the recognition she deserves because she's been great for a few years now that she's been on the scene. Kirsten Dunst, I know people were projecting her to get in, but I just had a hard time of actually seeing her getting in. Same as Jesse Plemons as well. I thought he was a bit of a long shot, but I'm pleasantly surprised that she got in. I really like Judi Dench in Belfast. Obviously, it would have been nice if Katrina Balfe got in as well. It's a pretty decent category. There's a few I haven't seen. I haven't seen West Side Story yet, so I can't really talk about that. Or, I guess that's the only one I haven't seen. Yeah. But yeah, what do you think of this category?
Pretty much same as you. I mean, I haven't seen West Side Story, but I've heard a lot of great things about Ariana DeBose in it, and so I'm sure. Like, it doesn't sound like that was a very controversial or surprising input there. Yeah, I think Katrina Balfe is the only one that I'm like, I wish she had gotten in because I think she was very good. If Belfast only got 1, though, yeah, Judi Dench is obviously she's a good actress. She's she has a bright career ahead of her as well. Yeah. Good up and comer. But yeah, I same thing in both of the supporting roles. It's I find that I don't know if you agree with this. I think the supporting roles are like stronger this year than the leading, which you could argue for many years actually, because supporting characters tend to be a bit more interesting. But I think for both of the actor and actress in a supporting role, it's not that like there's nothing there to be mad at. Like I'm sure there's things that you could throw a few names and be like, oh, I wish this person got in, but in general, it would be tough to say who are you going to take out in place of somebody that you think is also deserving to be in there.
Yeah, I would even say something like I hate the movie King Richard. I thought Anjanou Ellis was quite good in that movie.
Oh, she's very good. Yeah.
Obviously, I have problems with the whole script. So this is one of the times where, as we were mentioning earlier, it's hard to fully appreciate a good performance in a bad movie or a movie you don't like. This is one of the times where I can appreciate her performance and really not like the movie.
She's great in it. Like, I was texting you while I was watching it, and she was the one that I was, that
You
stood
kept
out
coming
the
back to it,
most
yeah.
to me. Yeah, because she was just so good, and it's kind of funny that I had only really heard Will Smith's name about King Richard. Like, he was overshadowing all of the people in the movie, and the movie itself almost. And it's interesting to see, like, she played, like, there's a bit of a mirror to reality where the mom of Serena and Venus genuinely was overshadowed by Richard
Yeah,
Williams as well. So
by
there's,
Will Smith.
I don't know if that's, yeah, it's a little bit of poetic, it's not justice, but just poetic symmetry there.
Well, it would be poetic justice if she ends up winning and Will Smith loses.
God, that'd be amazing. I'd actually go for that. I don't have as big of a gripe against Will Smith like you do, but it is getting a bit much. His very, I don't like it when actors are very clearly trying to get an Oscar. I find it a bit tacky. And I think he kind of gave up on it for a little while, but when he does it, it just is so obvious that he's just like gunning for an Oscar. And you're just kind of like,
Yeah.
dude, stop it. Like,
Mhm.
I don't like it when people do that.
Especially since it bugged me watching King Richard. I know we're not really supposed to be reviewing the movies here, but it bugged me when he's doing this ridiculous voice affectation, and then you see the real Richard in the end credits, and he sounds nothing like that. And I'm just like, where are you getting this voice from? He doesn't do that.
Well, I said this to you while I was watching, which is I've heard Will Smith do that voice before, and it's when he does interviews or like, even I've heard him do it on Fresh Prince. I've heard him do it, like, he does that accent or that voice when he's making fun of somebody. Like, he's just kind of trying to be funny. Like, and I wish, I actually did try to find a clip to send it to you, but it's quite difficult to find a clip for something that specific. But he does that voice, and then he added like a bit of maybe a bit more gravelly kind of texture to the voice to make it sound older, because he is, I think Richard's slightly older than he is. He actually, now that I think about it, maybe not.
I
Maybe
don't
it is
know.
about the same age. But yeah, it's a voice that when I heard him speak, I was like, I've heard this voice a million times from Will Smith, and he does it as a joke, like when he's just trying to make light of something.
Mm.
And it's weird that he's using this to play Richard Williams.
Yeah. Moving on to random categories, a few thoughts that kind of pop up into my head. Best animated feature was probably the easiest category I've ever predicted, with Encanto, Flea, Luca, Mitchells and the Machines, and Raya and the Last Dragon. Those seem to be the only animated movies this year that made any sort of positive buzz. Looking over at international feature, it looked like this was going to be the most crazy dominant year by, well-respected, world-renowned auteurs. And I haven't seen it yet, so I can't really talk about it, but I am seeing that Lunana Ayak in the Classroom from Bhutan got in over A Hero, which is an Asghar Farhadi movie. Asghar Farhadi has won this category twice before for A Separation and The Salesman, and somehow he misses for A Hero, which I watched it and it blew my mind. Such a beautiful, amazing film. I have no idea how he missed in this category, but otherwise, this is a very stacked category with Drive My Car, Flea, Hand of God, and The Worst Person in the World.
I was quite surprised as well. I thought A Hero was going to get in. There's also a Taiwanese movie called The Fall that was doing really, really well, and I thought that might get in as well. So, but the Lunana movie, I was curious about it because it's not often you see Bhutan pop up in this category. Like, they're not.
I think it's their first nomination ever.
Yeah, and so I looked up the movie, and it's made in 2019. Actually, this movie,
really,
and so they had submitted for last year's Oscars, but something happened. Like, there was, I believe it was along the lines of Bhutan didn't have an Oscars selection committee set up properly. And so because it was like on a technicality that the film got disqualified for last year, therefore they resubmitted it for this year. So I don't know if that kind of helped it because it was on the radar of the voting committee, like the larger voting committee, but then they had to disqualify it off of the technicality. But I found that really interesting, that because when I looked up, I was like, oh, it's a 2019 movie, like, which feels like a million years ago at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And I saw this movie playing at, it might have been Sundance that just passed. And I'm kicking myself now for not picking it, because I did want to watch it, but then I think the timing or something like that, I could have made it work, but it would have been a bit annoying. But I really wish I'd watched it now. Yeah, because it's just, Bhutan, it's not a place that I typically think of for film. And so that always makes me interested in a movie. If it's a country that you're like, I didn't even know they really had like a big enough film industry that you could submit something to the Oscars and it would be, you know what I mean? Like, that sounds kind of condescending, but I don't mean it that way. But yeah, I find that interesting. But the fact that A Hero didn't get in, I was rooting for The Fall, because I actually really like that movie. But yeah, I think international feature was one of the more competitive categories this year, kind of surprising.
Yeah. There's a few others that were, I think, in contention, stuff like Compartment Number 6 or I'm Your Man.
Yes.
So yeah, there's quite a few that, like, really high profile ones. And it sort of seems that normally in a given year, there's only like one or two movies that's the amount of pie that they're given in sort of the North American Hollywood sphere of, we'll pay attention to you this year, whether it's, it's Parasite or Drive My Car or something like that. And they're like, that's all you get, international film community.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seemed like this year there was a lot of really high profile films from high profile filmmakers that were making big waves, which I always love to see.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's like, even to say a movie like Titane, which was I would say, kind of like the general public knew about it because people just kept talking about this wacky movie. It wasn't even France's selection in the end, I believe. I can't remember.
No, it was France's selection. It just didn't make. The Oscars had released their long list, or I guess their short list of the 15 final films that were in contention, and France's pick, which was Titane, didn't make the cut. But are there any other categories you sort of want to give a quick mention about?
Cinematography, I would like to draw some attention there, simply because I'm gonna go over the nominees, which was Greg Fraser in Dune, or I'll just say the movie name: Dune, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, The Tragedy of Macbeth, and West Side Story. And the reason I found this interesting was because I really thought The Green Knight would get in.
That would have been so nice.
Because it was, my opinions about the movie aside, it was a beautiful movie, and I'm kind of shocked it didn't get in. But saying that, I look at the nominees, I don't know which one I would have taken out, to be honest. Like, it seems like a pretty stacked category and a very solid list. But I am a little surprised The Green Knight didn't get in. But maybe it's like what you said, where A24 just didn't do a great job of campaigning for their movies. And Green Knight came out in August, July, something like that. So it was a little while ago now. But that was one category I was a little bit not surprised by. I shouldn't say surprised, because I don't know if Green Knight really had that much traction going into it. But it's one of those funny categories where, similar to the supporting actor ones, it's such a good list of nominees. And I don't know who I would have taken out in place of Green Knight. But Green Knight was also beautiful. I'll say Zola as well. Although Ari Wegner was the DP for that, and she got in for Power of the Dog. So there you go.
Yeah, there could have been maybe some other stuff. I know Belfast was in contention, which I think a lot of people have been a little mad about. Yeah. There was, I just had one on the tip of my tongue, and I've already forgotten about it, so I can't say what my other pick would have been. It is a very strong category, and you're absolutely right. So they did a good job, I think, of picking high profile movies that are actually lauded for their cinematography. Oh, Spencer, that was it. Spencer could have gotten in as well. But
Spencer was one I was surprised it didn't get the costume as well.
I know it really should have. Yeah,
it's very surprising because it was great. It was very period appropriate, and they had different street clothes plus gowns and things like that. But anyways,
there's literally an entire sequence in Spencer of her wearing different beautiful dresses.
Yeah. I mean, Gucci, did they get in for styling? They must have.
No, only for hair and makeup. That's all.
That's a kick in the nuts for a movie that has the word Gucci in it. Like, come on now. My God.
But yeah.
Also, sorry, I just want to say for the international feature, when I was saying that Titan wasn't the front, I realized the movie I was thinking about was Parallel Mothers, because
that was another high profile one. Yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't end up being Spain's entry, which surprised me. But that was the movie I was thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, Spain has a weird thing with Pedro Almodovar. I don't know what it is. I think it's because a lot of the times the countries that choose the movies, it's a very small group of individuals. It's like 4 or 5 people that basically decide what is our pick this year. And I've heard, whisperings and rumors that whatever it is, Pedro Almodovar has beef with Spain's selection committee, whoever is on that committee, and they never select him.
And it's funny, though, that even though those committees or that selection committee isn't picking his films, they are still getting nominated for other categories, like around. Like, that's quite telling, I think, that, there's obviously something else going on there.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Spain's pick for international film, but there's been several other times where his movies have gotten nominations for stuff like screenplay for different acting nominations, and it has not been Spain's pick.
It's funny how that's the thing with like award shows, and I think that's what kind of takes me out of it a little bit, is that even though, like you said, how do you quantify a movie or a performance? It's not like sports in that way. There's no points. There's nothing like that. It is very subjective. But the fact that a lot of political stuff gets in the way, and people, whether or not they like an actress as an individual, like, that's very annoying to me, that those kinds of things play into it. I mean, it's just human nature, but I think that's what kind of disengages me a little bit from the Oscars, and not treating it as, I guess, I mean, it shouldn't be treated as the be all and end all, but I think that's what kind of pulls me away from it a little bit. Yeah,
for sure. I'm going to have to watch Free Guy. I really didn't want to have to do that, but it's nominated for Best Visual Effects.
Oscar nominated Free Guy. That's hilarious.
Yeah. As long as it's not Oscar winning Free Guy.
I mean, visual effects, no. Shang-Chi got nominated. I also have an issue with that for visual effects, because I don't think any of Marvel's VFX have actually been any good since Endgame. And I don't know what their problem is.
The Spider-Man No Way Home visual effects was good. But okay. The Doctor Strange stuff.
It's just, Marvel is just like becoming this really fast factory. Like, they're just pushing them through, and not because they know people are going to watch it regardless. I think, like, if you look at something like the Eternals, the VFX were so bad in that, and I don't know how Marvel as a company can allow that to be released. But again, it makes money, so what do they care? Yeah, but I think VFX, I was surprised, though, talking about comic books, and I don't mean to make this a DC Marvel thing, but the Suicide Squad didn't get in for that.
I'm very disappointed,
yeah. Yeah, I thought they should have. I think their VFX was better than Shang-Chi at the minimum. No Time to Die was
their visual effects were much more grounded.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know, I preferred it more. I also just preferred the movie overall more. But No Time to Die, I thought, was a good call for VFX as well. Like, that was a nice input for that one.
I was a little surprised that No Time to Die made the cut, because it doesn't have as flashy visuals, because a lot of the effects look much more practical. So I'm surprised it made the cut.
Which I think, though, I mean, that's kind of, Dune obviously is a really big spectacle, but
it's got a giant worm.
Yes, no, like, I mean, it obviously has a lot of computer, but like, it's known as well. Well, okay. Before I say what I was going to say, VFX, is that simply just CGI, or is it just visual effects in general? Not necessarily talking about CGI specifically.
You know what? I don't think there is a proper definition, because it just says for best visual effects. So if it was for best effects, so things like practical design, I would be all in favor for stuff like that. But it seems like the category is best CGI. Usually.
It has become that. Yeah, I think
Yes.
it definitely has become that. But like, I mean, if we take it as just visual effects, and the fact that No Time to Die, maybe they didn't use as much computer, and maybe it is a bit more practical and kind of quiet. Like, it is still an action movie that delivered a lot of big things, like explosions and that kind of thing. Even, you know, but I agree with you. I think it's less CGI for sure. But I mean, if they want to just award CGI, then they should rename the category.
Yeah, I would totally be fine for two separate categories of best practical effects and best visual effect, best CGI effects.
That'd be interesting. I mean, but I doubt they're going to do that because they combine sound at some point. So
they did.
I don't know if they're going to want to split visual now. But I mean, it's a good idea. I mean, there's plenty of categories they could add and take away, but that's for another day.
Yeah. But overall, I'm excited about this. As I mentioned off the top, ContraZoomPod will be doing breakdowns of all the best picture contenders and the odds that each of them have to win over the next coming weeks. And of course, you and I will be doing our article where we pick our own nominees and we get to put the Academy to shame with our far superior intellectual picks. But overall, I'm excited enough about this. You know, I love Oscar season. I think I'm doing pretty well for movies that I need to see. I've seen 7 out of the 10 best pictures already, and I only have 13 feature films total left to watch.
I don't know what my numbers are, but I've been doing pretty all right with them, I think. I'm trying to look at the best picture list right now. What do I still have to watch? Like, a few of the movies I wasn't able to watch simply because theaters were closed in Ontario. So something like, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, West Side Story. Those are the last 3 that I have, really. And I'll get to them eventually, I'm sure. If Licorice Pizza could go out on streaming, that would be very helpful as well.
Yep.
Paul Thomas Anderson. If you're listening, could you please do that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, PTA. Appreciate that. All right. Well, Rachel, what do you have going on right now, and where can people find more of your work?
As always, it's rachelkh.com _RachelKH for Twitter and Instagram. I just put out my top 10 list of the year. We're doing our episode in 2 months? Something like that for it. Which I probably will have a different list at that point. But as of right now, I put my 10 favorites that I enjoyed the most of last year. So you can go check that out. Yeah,
so if people want a sneak peek of what probably a good chunk of your picks will end up being on the podcast.
I'm sure the top 5 will probably stay the same. But I could see the last 5 maybe changing up a little bit.
All right. Well, you can follow this show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at ContraZoomPod. And let us know what you think of the Oscar nominations. Send an email to contrazoompod@gmail.com. Thank you to Eric and Kevin Smale for the theme music, and to Stephanie Pryor for the logo design. If you like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, we do post all episodes there too. Thanks for checking us out.